The first sign might not be inspiration. It might be irritation. You're sitting at a table with people who still speak to you in the old language, not literal words, but expectations. Someone makes the usual joke, waits for the usual version of you to laugh. Someone asks for help in the way they always do, assuming you'll automatically become the calm one, the flexible one, the one who absorbs the inconvenience. Or you're at work, watching a familiar problem unfold, and everyone around you seems to expect the old response from your nervous system. Rush, fix, prove, over-explain, stay late, make it smooth. But this time, something in you doesn't move the same way. The outside world is pressing the old button, and the machine inside you doesn't respond on command anymore. That's when growth starts to feel less like a beautiful transformation and more like friction. You begin thinking differently, reacting differently, seeing things more clearly, but your environment is still organized around who you used to be. The people around you may not be doing anything wrong. The routines may not be evil. The expectations may not even be unreasonable from their perspective. They were built from years of evidence. You trained your life to recognize a certain version of you, and now that version is no longer fully available. So the moment you change internally, your external reality doesn't immediately applaud. It pushes back. Not always aggressively. Sometimes it just keeps asking you to be who you were. This is where many people start doubting their growth. They feel the tension and assume they've done something wrong. They think, if I were really becoming healthier, this would feel peaceful. If I were really changing, my life would open smoothly. But often the opposite happens first. Growth can create tension precisely because your inner evolution moves faster than your external reality. Inside, you may have already crossed a threshold. Outside, your life is still arranged around old agreements, old habits, old dynamics, old versions of what everyone thought you would tolerate. You are updated internally, but your environment is still running the previous model. That mismatch can make ordinary life feel strangely resistant. You try to set a boundary, and someone reacts like you've become difficult. You stop over-explaining, and someone calls you distant. You stop laughing at what used to make you uncomfortable, and suddenly the room feels awkward. You stop carrying responsibilities that were never fully yours, and people wonder why you're different lately. And in those moments, the temptation is to defend yourself, to explain the entire inner transformation, to prove that this change is valid and morally reasonable. But growth rarely arrives with witnesses who understand it in real time. Most people recognize change only after it has become consistent enough to inconvenience their expectations. The difficult truth is that the version of you that built this life is no longer the one running it. The decisions shaping your current reality were made by a different mindset. That earlier version had different fears, different priorities, different limits, and maybe those decisions made sense then. Maybe they were intelligent. Maybe they were protective. Maybe they were the best options available when your nervous system was still organized around survival, approval, stability, or escape. You built routines, relationships, goals, and environments around what felt possible at the time. And because life has momentum, those structures continued even after your awareness expanded beyond them. This is why your current life can start feeling like a system designed for someone who no longer exists. Your calendar reflects old values. Your obligations reflect old fears. Your social patterns reflect old roles. Your habits reflect old coping strategies. Your work ethic may still be shaped by the version of you who believed rest had to be earned. Your relationships may still be shaped by the version of you who believed love required self-abandonment. Your ambitions may still be shaped by the version of you who confused being impressive with being safe. And now, because you've seen more, felt more, understood more, those structures begin to feel too tight. Not because they were all wrong, but because they were built for a smaller internal world. There is a biological reason this feels so uncomfortable. The brain is not designed to update your external life at the speed of insight. Insight can happen in a moment. Your nervous system changes through repetition. The environment changes through repeated behavior. People adjust through evidence, not announcements. So even when something inside you has shifted clearly, the outside world still needs time to encounter the new version of you enough times to believe it. Until then, it keeps reaching for the old pattern. It keeps assuming the old response. It keeps trying to preserve the balance it knows. This is why your life can feel like it's resisting you. When you change, familiar systems begin pushing back. Not because the universe is punishing you, and not because everyone secretly wants you to fail, but because systems are calibrated to repetition. Families have roles, workplaces have expectations, friendships have rhythms, relationships have emotional contracts, many of them never spoken aloud. If you were always the one who softened the conflict, the system expects softness. If you were always the one who worked harder, the system expects extra effort. If you were always the one who listened but rarely needed support, the system expects your silence. When you act differently, you disrupt the balance. And systems, even unhealthy ones, often try to restore themselves before they evolve. That restoration attempt can look like guilt. It can look like someone being disappointed in you. It can look like people subtly testing whether your boundary is real. It can look like your own mind whispering that you're being selfish, dramatic, cold, ungrateful, or inconsistent. But what feels like resistance is often your life trying to maintain an outdated version of you. The old pattern doesn't disappear the moment you outgrow it. It asks for proof. It asks again. It checks the door handle. It wants to know if the new you is serious or just passing through. And because growth is still new, that pressure can make you feel misunderstood. Others may not recognize or validate your internal change. They may only see the outer behavior. You're quieter, less available, less reactive, less willing to participate in the old exchange. They may not see the months or years of inner work behind it. They may not see the exhaustion that taught you to stop overextending, the grief that clarified your values, the disappointment that ended your loyalty to certain illusions, the self-respect that slowly grew after being ignored too long. To them, it may look sudden. To you, it has been happening in silence for a long time. Being misunderstood in this phase can be especially lonely because you may struggle to explain what's different. The change is not always a clean story. You don't always have one sentence that makes it acceptable. You might only know that you can't keep functioning as the old version of yourself without feeling dishonest. You might only know that your body tightens when you try to say yes. You might only know that certain conversations leave you feeling like you've abandoned yourself. You might only know that the old rhythm, once manageable, now feels like noise. And because your growth is internally obvious but externally invisible, you can feel ahead inside and unseen outside. This is where many people start questioning whether they should shrink back, not because they want to betray themselves, but because shrinking reduces friction. Acting like your previous self brings temporary comfort. The room relaxes. People stop asking questions. The system recognizes you again. You soften your perspective, hold back your thoughts, laugh at the old things, take on the old responsibilities, tolerate the old dynamics, and for a moment life feels easier because the external world stops resisting. But then, later, there's a private heaviness, a quiet self-betrayal. You realize you bought peace by abandoning the part of you that had finally begun to grow. That is one of the most painful stages of transformation. Realizing that returning to the old self is possible, but no longer innocent. Before awareness, the pattern was automatic. After awareness, repeating it feels different. It feels chosen, even when the choice was made under pressure. You can still shrink, but now you can feel the cost. You can still perform, but now you can hear the performance in your own voice. You can still accommodate everyone, but now your body keeps the receipt. Shrinking yourself to fit your old life only delays the alignment you've already outgrown. The mind will try to justify shrinking as kindness. It will say, don't make things difficult. Don't disappoint people. Don't change too much. Don't become hard to love. Don't risk losing your place. And sometimes there is genuine wisdom in moving gently. Growth doesn't need to become aggression. But there is a difference between gentleness and self-erasure. Gentleness respects timing. Self-erasure hides truth to preserve comfort. If you are constantly making yourself smaller so other people don't have to adjust, you are not creating peace. You are maintaining a delay between who you are and how you live. This delay has a cost. It shows up as restlessness, irritability, fatigue, or that strange sense of being out of sync with your own life. You may feel like your inner world is clear in solitude, but immediately compromised in familiar environments. Alone, you know what has changed. Around certain people, the old reflex wakes up. That doesn't mean your growth is fake. It means behavior lags behind awareness, especially under social pressure. The nervous system defaults to familiar strategies when it senses risk, and being rejected, misunderstood, or losing belonging can register as risk. So the body reaches for what used to work: appease, perform, explain, hide, fix, over-deliver. This is the part that needs compassion and precision at the same time. You don't break old patterns by hating yourself for having them. They were built from repetition, and they change through repetition. You do not become aligned because you had one powerful realization. You become aligned when your repeated choices start teaching your environment, your relationships, and your nervous system that the new version of you is not temporary. That is the slow recalibration of your external world. It doesn't happen instantly, but it does happen. Small shifts begin. You stop answering every message with urgency. You stop volunteering for emotional labor that leaves you empty. You stop accepting invitations that are really obligations in disguise. You stop explaining boundaries as if they require legal defense. You stop pretending to be interested in conversations that only connect through complaint, competition, or performance. These are not dramatic changes from the outside, but they are structural changes. They begin updating the system. Some relationships will adjust. Some people will learn the new rhythm. They may be surprised at first, but if the connection is real, it can evolve around your honesty. Other relationships may reveal that they depended heavily on your old role. They may become tense, they may fade, they may require a distance you never expected. That can hurt, but it also clarifies something important. Not every connection can survive the loss of your self-abandonment. Some bonds were built around mutual presence. Others were built around your availability as a function. Growth teaches you the difference. Your routines will recalibrate too. The way you spend your morning, the way you work, the way you rest, the way you consume noise, the way you respond to stress. At first, these changes may feel awkward because the old life has a stronger infrastructure. It has reminders, habits, people, and emotional rewards already built in. The new life is under construction. It needs repetition before it feels natural. So if it feels unstable at the beginning, that isn't a sign it's wrong. It's a sign it's new. A simple micro-practice can help in the exact moments where your old life tries to pull you back into your old self. When you feel the pressure to shrink, pause before responding. Not for a long time, just enough to interrupt the reflex. Take one slow breath and let the exhale be slightly longer than the inhale, as if you are telling your body that this moment is uncomfortable, but not dangerous. Then ask yourself quietly, am I choosing this from alignment, or am I choosing this to keep the old version of me alive? You don't need to answer perfectly. You don't need to make a dramatic decision. You only need to create enough space to notice the difference. Sometimes the aligned choice is still patient, still kind, still measured, but it won't feel like disappearance. Then make the smallest honest adjustment available. If you usually over-explain, say less. If you usually say yes immediately, ask for time. If you usually absorb the tension, let the silence exist. If you usually hide your change, allow one true sentence to enter the conversation. These small choices matter because they are the way your life learns you. Your environment cannot adapt to a version of you that never appears. It can only recalibrate around the version you repeatedly practice in real time. Over time, your external world adjusts to the standards your new identity sets. That word standards doesn't have to sound harsh. It simply means the conditions your current awareness can live inside without constant self-betrayal. Your standards may become quieter, cleaner, less performative. You may require more honesty, more space, more reciprocity, more emotional simplicity. You may stop being impressed by chaos. You may stop mistaking urgency for importance. You may stop calling exhaustion commitment. These new standards begin reshaping your life from the inside outward. And eventually, the tension begins to dissolve. Not because everyone understands you perfectly, and not because every part of life becomes easy, but because your surroundings begin to support who you actually are now. Your habits stop fighting your values. Your relationships stop depending on a role that drains you. Your decisions stop being organized around outdated fear. Life starts feeling stable again, but in a new way. Not the old stability that came from predictability at any cost. A deeper stability that comes from coherence. This is what it means to become someone your life can finally support. You build structures that match your current awareness. You create rhythms that don't require constant recovery. You choose relationships where you can be honest without performing a full legal argument for your needs. You shape a life where your nervous system doesn't have to keep pretending that familiar pain is safety. That kind of life is not built in one dramatic leap. It is built through many small refusals and many small acceptances, refusing the old role, accepting the new standard, refusing the false peace, accepting the temporary friction, refusing to shrink, accepting that growth may be misunderstood before it is respected. There is a paradox here, and it is worth holding carefully. Your life may resist who you've become at first, but that resistance is often the pressure that shows you what needs reshaping. The friction is not always proof you're wrong. Sometimes it is proof that the system is finally meeting the truth you've been carrying privately. And once truth enters a system, the system either adapts or reveals why it cannot. So if your growth feels ahead of your life right now, if your environment still speaks to an older version of you, if people don't recognize the shift yet, it may help to stop interpreting the friction as failure. You are not broken because your outer world hasn't caught up. You are in the recalibration phase. The old structures are being tested against the new awareness. Some will stretch, some will break, some will be rebuilt. And slowly, if you keep choosing from the person you are now instead of the person life still expects, the delay will close. Your life can't handle who you've become yet, but it will once you reshape it to fit you. Not by forcing everyone to understand immediately, not by burning everything down to prove a point, but by living the change consistently enough that reality has to respond. One boundary, one honest sentence, one altered routine, one refusal to disappear, one decision that feels unfamiliar but clean. That is how the external world catches up to the internal one. And one day, what feels like friction now will become the foundation of a life that no longer asks you to shrink in order to belong.